All right, put a little tweet out into the world. I forgot the link. Duh. All right, so let's talk about what is going on here. I'm borrowing a coworker's office space, so it's a little bit echoey in here, at least more echoey than home. Let me pop this out real quick. How do I do that? Man, you're really watching me struggle already. Come on. Okay, so this button is broken. Okay, I'll check in and see if that works later, and I can pop that chat out. So what I'm working on today is this little thing. While I was away, there was all of our apps have this kind of, we have our top bar, and then some of the pages have this tabbed navigation. And while I was away, they made a little spec for this to demonstrate that. Oh, hold on, I gotta get my pop protection on there. A couple of our designers, Travis and who's the other one? Yeah, so a couple of our designers, you don't know them anyway. A couple of our designers worked on this spec, and it just kind of says that gives the general dimensions and size of this component in various orientations. So I thought I would go through and just kind of build it out as I normally would, but with you hanging out over my shoulder. So we'll see how well this goes. Looking at it right now, one of the things that happens, actually, this may be outdated, but basically there's two sections. So there's this section here that has kind of the tabbed interface. It's got this kind of inside number thing that's kind of nested in the tabs, or has the potential to be nested in those tabs, and then these buttons. Now, in the event that there are just these tabs, those buttons kind of orient themselves this way. They hold fast to the bottom if they're not nested. If this page title is present, and then they would kind of align center with these with the page title if there's no tabs. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. My thinking in kind of coming to this thing fresh, I'm thinking that right off the bat, this little section is going to be its own component, whether or not that's just like a div or whatnot. Something that applies this look at this consistent margin at the top. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how I would resolve that if I'm in this scenario, but I'm not too worried about the moment. Maybe it becomes nothing, and these just nest against the top like that, and then we have some kind of additional spacer that we would put in this situation, or none at all. Anyway, just thinking out loud. I think that this should be like a totally separate component. So I'm not worried about this, and consequently this at the moment. I'm gonna solve for these tabs first. I'm gonna set a container, and then I'm going to just make a little component that has all of this dimensionality built in. So yeah, I think that's where I'll start. Let me see if that button works yet. Oh my gosh, this is even more screwed than before. I just want to pop out your chat. If anyone wants to help me figure out how to improve the quality of my stream, I would be more than open to suggestion on that. It's been very frustrating. Oh, come out. Oh, I was missing the button the whole time. It was way over there. I was hiding it. Okay, I'm gonna put that on my other screen. All right, so let's dive in then. Got Firefox open, and I'm just gonna make a new React project. Nothing fancy. I wanted to show you that I clicked that button so you know I wasn't hiding anything from you. Okay, let's pull this open. Let you see the whole thing. Let's see. So where to start? Typically when I start a new component, I just do the whole thing as if it was kind of like static markup. I put everything in line just to kind of find a shape for how this component should be. So this is going to be the kind of like that block that we'd talked about. Actually, I'll move this over. You kind of see that in the side there. So this is going to be that gray block. Whoa, not stiff, stuff. That is a different stream. So just do style. Background color, light gray. Okay, cool. So we got a light gray background color. And then I'm just going to make a couple of these. One. And just see that we have white as a background there. Now this is where you watch me struggle with CSS. Let's do display flex. Put some padding so that we can see that background isn't covered up by the that white tab. Let's just put 16 in there for now. Okay, cool. So we have this background, and then we have a little tab there. Now this is not going to have universal padding all around that. So let's actually just change that to padding top, because these are going to sit at the bottom. And then let's see, padding left is, let's consult the drawing, 24 pixels. So yeah, so we're 16 from the top, 24 from the left. That's going to be the left and right, actually. So let's do... and I know that these, there are like kind of shorthands for these. When I'm in this kind of like rough sketching time, I try to stick away from those just because I end up having to recalculate them all the time. So I just kind of put those whole values in there. That actually looks kind of wide to me. Let's see what's going on. Actually, no, maybe that's right. Where is your clicker? Yeah. Okay, 1624. Just bigger than it is on this drawing over here. Okay, cool. Noted. Okay, cool, perfect. So let's kind of get the dimensions of this thing set up now. So we have kind of our outer box set up. Now let's figure out what that looks like. So it's white. We're gonna add some padding to the top. 16. We'll just move around. 24, 16, 24. Yes, Adam, of course. I'm happy to stream. Thanks for watching. Oh, awesome. DJ says the quality is fine. So thank you. I don't know what YouTube's telling me then, but I am glad that you can see everything as you should. Okay, cool. So we have, so this is starting to kind of take shape. All of this has been fairly simple so far. So that size is right. So we got the outside, we got this button. Now at this point, I'm thinking there's going to be a bunch of these, right? So this is a fine time to pull this out as a component. So I'll just paste that, say function. I'll just go with tab for now until we figure out a better name for it. Hello, Ivan. Thank you for joining us. Okay, and then we're gonna render that new tab component. Cool. So I have this static one in there now. That's not ideal. So we're just gonna spread props out over this. Delete that. Oh, missing a dot there. Okay, cool. So now we have nothing. That's exactly what we want, is nothing. And we'll put our one here. Cool. Now, this isn't absolutely necessary at this point, but categorically, anytime I'm working on a component, and I am controlling one of the props in a certain way, I always want to give control back to the implementing developer. So in a component like this, as soon as I start using style, I would take style as a prop, or I would pull style off and then spread it out here. The reason being is that I want to have like a very natural, I want people to naturally use this API. So if they say style colors red, they can do that without having to really dive into the implementation of this component. It's a nice thing. This is just something that after years of building these kind of like shared components, I want people to have control. Now, the reason that this is at the so spread at the bottom instead of the top is because I want them to have control over everything. And again, this might not end up using this. It's very unlikely, actually, that this would end up using this style attribute. However, in the meantime, I just want to make sure that everything works for it. But the value here in spreading props at the end is that now all of these values can be overwritten in line. So if I wanted the background color to be red, I can do that, and then these kind of become the default values, but are not hard to override. I don't have to create new APIs to override them. So this is that's why I would take style and then kind of spread it out after the opinionated stuff. Cool. Just because I don't want people to feel stuck, to feel like they have to like make a pull request to open up a certain part of the API just to restyle this. That's absolutely insane. So just leave it open, apply some sensible defaults, the defaults that you have to, and kind of let people explore and do what they need to do. So that's great. Let's throw a couple tabs in there. So we got 2 and 3. Now we're seeing right away we need a little bit of space in between these tabs. I could apply that at this container level, but kind of thinking ahead, I don't like the idea that I would have to provide an API to like say what that gap is supposed to be. So I'm inclined to start with just like a spacer like this. So I would do style padding is going to be, let's see, we have 8 pixels. Yeah, 8 pixels of padding in between them. Now, because this is a Flex container, I can, oops, it's not what I want. I can do a margin of 4 pixels on this div, and now it's going to put that margin kind of all around it, which gives us an 8 pixel gap in between. And I would just use that in both places. So it's less automatic, but also it's extremely flexible. I think that might come in handy to down the road when we have those buttons. So we have these buttons over here. I'd like it if people had kind of the flexibility to do their own things. So we have some button. In which case, even if I don't provide something for this, they could put in margin auto. They could just put their own spacer in and have it shove over to the side. So while this isn't quite automatic, and they're going to have to put spacers, manually put the spacers in there, right now I like this because it really leaves this portion of it completely flexible, no matter what you end up putting over on this side. So I'm going to stick with that for now. And let's do this. So we've duplicated this now. So let's make that a component. Function spacer. I'm actually going to do something that I do a lot, and I'm going to call this, I can't use numbers. So 8 pixel flex spacer. Actually, let's go even crazier. I'm just going to name it totally insane. Something I'd never actually want to type, but just so I don't kind of get into this zone where I start over optimizing things, I'm just going to call it out and just have it be like super specific. Then also kind of like looking at this down the road, I'll kind of have a better idea of what job that's doing. Okay, so that's working. Because my inclination, even at this moment, is to kind of create a prop-based API for this, so that I can allow someone to change that margin. But then the question is like, what is this thing actually doing? And then how do I name that? I don't want to give it a bad name, so I'm just going to name it super explicitly, which will signal to me that when I come up with kind of a wider array of functionality for this thing, I can come up with a name for it then. So I guess, why don't I leave that in there just as a signal to myself that this is kind of my intention coming down the road. Okay, so we got our background, we got our tabs. It looks like we got our gaps. Perfect. We need to solve for this little doohickey right here. So tabs can potentially have a number that indicates how many items are active in that tab, or how many things that they can find. So it's a notification, or maybe just a number of things that are or not dealt with in that tab. Okay, so let's start doing that. It's only in one tab, so I'm just going to do this in line here. I'm not going to add a new API for that tab yet. We'll just use a span. $35. Okay, so as we expect, this just adds that onto this 3. No problems. So what do we want? Man, I am having crazy hard time. I took a little bit of time off, and now I cannot type anymore. Or maybe I'm just being reacquainted with the fact that I was never very good at typing. Okay, so this is going to be black at 12% opacity. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what it says. This background color of these little things should be black at 12% opacity. Let's add that in. What is it? RGBA, is that how we do that? And I think black is 000, and then 0.112. Oh, I gotta put that in a string, because this is React, not CSS. Okay, cool. And then it's going to be rounded. Border radius. What is that? What's the hack for that? 999 pixels. Okay. Now we don't have any padding information here, but I know that all of this is based on a 8-point pixel grid. So let me Google that real quick. So I think I've talked about this. I might have talked about this last time. Man, my internet sucketh right now. The idea behind an 8-point grid is that 8 points becomes your, or 8 pixels becomes your single unit of measurement. So you don't have these kind of constant questions of like, oh, should we move this in a pixel or down a pixel or out a pixel? Everything should fall on these really nice 8 pixel lines. And sure, you're going to have to fudge things a little bit, but the goal is that you really kind of develop these this consistent grid instead of having to kind of reinvent the wheel every time. So I know that is the goal with this document. So even though I don't know exactly what the measurements are here, I'm going to continue with that trend of 8 pixels. So how we do that is the question for me. Okay, so right now our box that we have, and this will not remain a div forever. I'm just using it as a div. This box that we have is, what is it? 16 pixels above and below the text, and then 24 pixels on each side. And then I'll have to probably explicitly set the text. So there's a rule in here saying that the font size is 16 pixels. So I can assume that this should fit. Let's see. This is going to be like 8 pixels from the border. So it itself is going to be like 32 pixels high. Yeah, so let's try that. Okay, so we got our span. Actually, this is going to be block, so I'm going to actually, no, I'll do that later. Okay, so we're going to display that inline block. And I apologize for the jitteriness. Every time I save, I get thrown up to the top here. So that problem's just going to get worse as we keep working. And then I'm going to say... okay, so that's not right. I'm thinking maybe I'll just do this dirtiness where I'll put 16 pixels of padding around the outside and then set a margin of negative 16 pixels to back it out. Except 8. Cool. And then yeah, seems about right. Okay, cool. I think that's right. I guess ideally it'd be a little bit more rounder, but I think even in this it's not showing perfect roundness. I mean, these little finer implementation details are not something that I want to get obsessed over right now. I just kind of want to sketch out the shape of this thing and move on with my life. We can have those fights another day. Just so I am, oops, that's not what I wanted. How do I get back over here? There's this style CSS, and I think I'd like to implement at this point some of these details. Let's see, so I'm going to assume that these are, because I know that this is for our apps, I'm going to assume that this is just kind of like a state of the world styling. So I'm going to put this right on the body to get that like sans serif type of look. And again, Lato is the state of the world. I don't think that it gets loaded on Code Sandbox, but we could try. Yeah, not. But I can leave that in there. Don't need that text align center. Okay, cool. The next thing that I need to do, or I guess I need to get those rounded. Let's round those up a bit on the top. Let's see. So we're going to find our tab component. What, like 4 pixels? Yeah, it's impossible to tell what that should be, but let's go with 4 pixels. It's like half of our 8. Now we just want that on the top or on the top left and the top right. And I can never remember how these go. Top left radius. Oh, magic. Nailed it. First time. You're all like, not impressive, bro. Not impressive at all. Okay, cool. So we have those rounded, perfect. Before I become too pleased with myself about inconsequential things, the next step here is that we need to figure out how to give these kind of an inactive appearance. So these are active, these are inactive. So I think, so yeah, so I guess the text color is that color. So the background, oh, gotcha. So the background should be 80% opacity of white. There we go. Zoom in. So this needs to be 80% of white when it's inactive. So this is a place where we're going to have to put an API. Now I'm not exactly sure what these are going to be in terms of markup. So this is an active question in my mind. My assumption is that these will be anchors because they'll be changing the URL. However, it's possible that they would be buttons. I'm thinking I'm going to go with anchors, though. I'm just going to call it on anchors and at least enforce from this side in some way that they are anchors, because they should change the URL and then that should kind of redraw the page content, whether that happens with a server-side request or in using React Router. So let's change that before we get too far in this. Kind of amazed that that didn't cause more problems. What are we hearing here? Anchors must have content, and the content must be accessible by a screen reader. I don't know if that's something that I can make go away here, because I'm passing those props. So, I mean, passing that content in as props. I guess if you know how to make that error go away without disabling it, let me know. I would just disable it. So yeah. Okay, cool. So those are anchors now. That's awesome. 1, 2, 3, perfect. Now we need to figure out that that state. So I guess the question for me is whether or not these are going to be like what to call that. So the one that is focused right now, what's the there's actually an API for this with anchors. There's like a CSS selector for like the targeted thing. I'd love to borrow that verbiage if I could. Yeah, styling anchors with target. Let me go back. So when you have kind of these, what do they call them? HTML fragments. There's this target selector that allows you to kind of style things when it is the target when you're on that fragment. I kind of like that verbiage. I don't know if it's a bad idea or a fine idea to borrow it, but hell, I'm all about making mistakes. So yeah, let's call that target. Yeah, I think you're right. So Adam's saying that the only way to make that go away is if I were to actually take children and then kind of pass that through specifically. I could do that. But yeah, I'd probably just disable the rule. I don't like owning things if I don't have to. Maybe that's a problem of mine. But I don't like having to own the implementation of any part of the thing, if you might be able to tell from the work we've done so far. So yeah, so I'm going to ignore that for now. But I think one thing that would be helpful to know, which should be exposed via name, is knowing that these tabs are anchors by default. I think that would help the implementing developers know that they're going to have to attach attributes like href and anything else that they care about. So we'll add that as a line item later. T-ball. Oh no. Let's do that. Let's do target true. I don't know if I love that. Doesn't matter. Keep moving forward, right? So we will destructure that off when we're using this component. And let's see. So if it's, man, it's been too long. So what's the goal? So we want so background color is white, but we want it to only be white if the target is true. Yeah. I'm still using, sorry. So yeah, Adam's saying that I would still be using children, just in a different way. And that is absolutely true. Let's just do it. Make the error go away. Why not? So was it 80% opacity? So it should be 5.8. So I need to flesh out the rest of this. Okay, cool. So all I'm doing is switching on this target prop. So if it's true, we're going to get white, and otherwise we're going to get that kind of 80% of white value. It's possible the contrast isn't good enough for you to be able to see it here, but trust that in fact that is happening. And if I changed any of these, so now that one is the same. Now it's possible in this case to have two components, or all of these be true. And I'm not in a position yet where I want to enforce that. I'd have to take a totally different approach. So no matter what, I'd like to expose kind of these lower level components so that people can opt out of the higher level functionality if we end up building it. But for right now, I don't mind that many of these can be true. I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to fix that. Let's see. So we're going to pop off children 2 just to make that thing go away. Cool. All right. So where are we at right now? So we got kind of this focus state, kind of like what's in focus. Everything's looking good so far. Oh, I don't have this text implemented. So it looks like the font weight of the target is going to be 400, but it's going to be 700 if it's in focus. Okay, no problem. Let's see, font weight. Target's true. Oops, don't need that. Is that right? Yeah, 700. Otherwise it's going to be 400. Cool. So now that is the case. We have the bolder targeted one and the less bold, these guys. Excellent. Feeling good about that. No icons and tabs. Okay, that's a note that I cannot enforce at this point. The color here. So no note on color here, but here it's supposed to be 444. I'm actually just gonna say 444 always, and we can circle back if that is not the case. Actually, It looks like that might not be the case now that I'm seeing it. Sometimes you just gotta see it to know that it's not right. So if it's the target, gosh, I don't even know. Let's just go with easy enough to change later. Okay, cool. So we got those that focusiness looking good. Looking good. We got our number. Everything is starting to come together. Okay. I guess let's talk about buttons now. So we have this happening over here. These buttons. So we already have our gap. That's good. We already have the top. We need to figure out is this bottom. So how are we going to get these all fitting in the right space? And again, we have that kind of 8 pixel spacer that we need to figure out. Depending on how much stamina I have, we're already at about 45 minutes. How much stamina I have for doing this live stream, we might implement these buttons. But for right now, I'm just thinking about placement. My thinking at the moment, well, let's just put the buttons in. My thinking is that I'm going to want to have some kind of like div around these that allows me to control where the buttons fit in the layout. I'm not sure why exactly I'm having that feeling, but that's kind of my inclination right now. So secondary button. Is this primary button? Oops. It's going to be type. Some of the Vim in here is always a little bit off. Okay, cool. So we have our spacer, and that's getting things over into the right position. So that margin auto is kind of stretching to fill this space, putting all of this over to the right. However, they're not lining up in the place that we want them to. So let's get their size right first. There's no indication of how big these buttons are kind of on their own outside of the layout. So I guess let's figure that out. Let's see. Ooh, forgot that's in relative. So I gotta make that explicitly pixels. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be changing that. So my CSS foo is leaving me. Let's just force it. Let's just mow it over right now. So actually, okay. So because I'm flexboxing these kind of get like a different display than their regular display, I'm assuming. Yes. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So let's do this. I'm just going to run with the height for right now. Does that make smaller? Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So where do these need to be positioned? If you came to watch me struggle, it's happening now. You're going to get what you paid for. I promise. I'm not really sure how to inspect that gap, but it looks about 16-ish for me. Okay. Okay. We already have a spacer, so add our spacer in there. That's looking about right. I'm curious. Okay, so I align items center. It's going to push those down because it's it's excluding this margin from the height of these things. So it's going to align it. It's going to align it so like the baseline of this content is the baseline of this text right here. Let me see if that is desirable or if it is not. This is my like ruler that I use all the time. It's just the window. Okay, so it looks like that's not the desired outcome that we want. It looks like these are supposed to be aligned to the top of the tabs. So the tops of the buttons should be marked, match the top of the tabs. Let's see if we can do that. Right now they don't. Line items top. I can't do my fancy little window edge trick here. But I'm gonna call it, or I guess I'll just grab a different window. Man, so crude, so crude. That's looking good. Whoop, lost that window. Okay. I guess what's left there is to implement the actual specifics of those buttons. I know, just given our apps, that those will likely be styled with existing CSS classes. So I might leave that off. Let's look at what else we got here. So we got the shape of all that figured out. What is the story with this? So in this example, we have this page title, and that has like a full 24 pixel gap on top and bottom, which needs to kind of merge in with that. I feel like margin might be a great tool for that because it all automatically handles that. So let's do that. Let's add a page title to this. So this is going to need to be, so I was reading and I got distracted. So this is going to be its own box because it's above the other content. Okay, cool. However, it does reveal that we need to have this background color kind of separated from our flex box. Why I typed that again instead of copy pasting it, beyond me. Also, we're going to have, okay, so the question that I have now is that we have this container that knows about the dimensions from the side that it needs to be. That is going to be shared. That preference is going to be shared between kind of across these disconnected containers. So the question that I have is, how do I want to share that? How do I want to share that across? Because it'd be nice if they have this container that they can easily add this page title element without having to kind of opt in again to the kind of those preferences. So now not all of those are right. So I guess, are we putting anything else up here? No, but let's keep it display flex anyway. Take line top out. Padding is going to be, okay, so this is where the margin versus padding thing comes into play. So let's just stick with padding for now. It's going to be 24 pixels all around. Man, that seems super big. Oh my gosh. Okay, now because we have padding on these, let's see if I can get it to highlight. Now, because I'm using padding instead of margin, this gap is not going to collapse. So if I decide to stick with padding, I have to give some mechanism of collapsing this top padding. Now this H1 is automatically getting some, obviously the H1 styling. So I want to kind of opt out of that, but I want people to be able to provide the right markup that they need to provide. So let's say margin 0, just so we kind of understand this is more what we're after. Man, I hit that 55-minute mark, and then my brain just goes to shit. So this might be ending soon. Okay, cool. So let's see. So we have this. Let's see what happens if I just change all of these to margin. I gotta see it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so nothing bad seems to happen there. That did cause a problem. However, it does look as though this margin collapsed, which is what we were after. Yeah. Okay, now the problem that we get into is having this margin, the margin collapsing on the top. Now, I think part of that is because of the styling, which I would usually have some kind of reset to get rid of. Okay. All right. So now I'm in the weeds. I know that I want that margin collapsing, but I also want to make sure that I have like the minimum values there. Um, but also my brain is just going to mush being live for an hour. So I'm thinking that what I would do at this point is that I would make some type of like header container that had that preference around the side, and I would expect that people would use it. Margin top 16. I guess this is going to change. Okay, yeah. So the margin is not kind of changing the changing this background, right? Because it's not actually applying that space. So I'm still getting this margin gap, but it's not pushing up the background of the containing element. And that's to be expected. So I think that's a question that I'll probably just kind of continue to like tinker with to decide how it is that I want to do this. Do I want to have just one big element at the top that's going to kind of control the borders of this thing, and have and not necessarily require wrappers, or do it another way? Now that we've kind of seen the effects of this, I'm going to do one last thing, which is just to transition it to kind of one big flex wrapper around all of the inside flex wrappers and see how that goes. And then I'm calling it quits. I'm done with you. Display, but thanks for watching. So we're going to change that to display flex. What is it? Flex. It's not orientation. Direction. I got something wrong. One direction. Column. Vertical. What am I thinking? What a noob. Such a noob. Okay, cool. So we'll do that. Let's apply that margin here. Yeah, see, this is where we get into it a little bit. Let's just do the side margins. So actually, let's. Whoa, wrong component, homie. These side margins never change, so that's the kind of thing that I would like to have here. So we can get rid of it here. Margin left, right, margin bottom. Something's pissed. Unexpected token. Cool. So I'm going to change these back to padding. Okay, cool. And then I need to get this off of there. Okay. Margin top. Okay, so the question is, if I get rid of this, okay, we still got that 16 pixels. That's good. And then we have margin bottom. Oh my gosh, why are you not selecting? Okay, so if I see these, that should be collapsing those margins. It's not. Oh, thank you, Adam Collum. Yeah, it's not, and I'm assuming that's because of Flex, and that Flex doesn't collapse margins. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm assuming from what I'm seeing that these Flex containers are not going to collapse the margins. Yeah. So I guess let me leave myself a to-do list. So the margins aren't collapsing. So I need to figure out page title with tabs because the margins aren't collapsing. Other than that, it seems right. Let's see how this looks if I just have this container and this. Oh, whoa, it's not letting me select that much at one time. Okay, forget that. Okay, cool. So that's feeling good. As a last step, since these elements are kind of starting to take form, what I will do is I will pull these out into components. So let's just call this our, going with a generic name for right now. I'll figure all that out when I export it. Container. Take those props, spread them out at the bottom. Again, we're going to do that style because we're controlling style, and I want to make sure that everyone has control over the things they need control over. Oh, getting some comments. Give me just a sec. Cool. Let me head to these comments real quick. So yeah. Oh yeah. So the margin that isn't collapsing. So this question over which margins aren't collapsing. There's margin around this bad boy. It's that yellow right there, and then this. Come on. This group right here. It would be nice if I could just use the kind of the CSS to kind of expect these margins, this gap to collapse, so that I can just leave this. I can have the one container that does the sides, but then if this is displayed on its own, it has that margin on the top. If this is displayed on its own, it has its own margin, and that they would just collapse that gap in the middle. I think I'm opting out of that because I'm using Flex and not the box model. I think that's the problem that I'm having. So I'm trying to avoid like adding API for that or whatnot. But I think that what I'm going to need to do is just I don't know. I think that you probably just have to manually do that. Yeah, so DJ is saying whenever you use Flexbox, margins no longer collapse, could be an issue. No, I think you're probably right. That's just kind of the way it's designed. I always forget that they're like two different things, so that's my bad. These don't necessarily need to be flex, so I might explore that a little bit, kind of not on this this thing, because this is really more ideally more like React than CSS, even though they're kind of intertwined a lot. So yeah, so these, I'm not exactly sure what these kind of containers are going to be yet, but I'd also like to pull out this component as something like tab notification maybe. Again, the names really don't matter at this point until I start modularizing this. And even then, you should be able to kind of rename them on import. So you'd be able to name them to anything that makes sense. But let's go notification bubble. Style props return. Didn't copy it. Spread those props, spread this style, pull children off. Good, good, good. Cool, so now we can use that. Let's put that on the middle button here so we see what happens. So this is gonna be, what was it? What did I call it? Tab notification bubble. And some didn't close. Cool, awesome. So yeah, so we got that going on. I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like we got most of this in. Again, that margin collapsing thing, I need to figure out. I'd prefer not to add a prop to do that, or require that people kind of change that style. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to tinker with it in my own time. Other than that, I'm feeling pretty good about kind of where we landed on all of this. Obviously, all of this is super explicit at the moment, but we know that we have a lot of flexibility. So down the road, maybe I just might take a list of tabs and can control all that. But under the hood, I'm just going to be using these components that we've made. So yeah, I guess, hit me up in the comments on this video after it goes live if you have any questions, or hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions. By any means. I'm happy to talk about all this stuff, hear about how you would have done it differently. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me for all this time. So I hope you have a great day.